The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Grothman, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Last couple of weeks, I had a chance to go down to Mexico, and they brought up an issue that I wasn't really expecting to hear. But a couple of Border Patrol guys pointed out to me that that firearms were very, very regulated in Mexico. And you do a little Google search, and you find out the recent article in the Wall Street Journal. The first 9 months in 2019, Mexico, with some wildly difficult laws, had a murder rate of 6 times that in the United States. Not 6% more, not 60% more, but assuming he got it right, maybe he was cherry-picking the year, I don't know. 6 times as many murders as in the United States. I assume the Mexican officials who put these laws into effect thought they were going to save lives at the time that they made it so difficult for law-abiding Mexicans to get a hold of a firearm. But obviously the results of their laws was not to make Mexico safer. There are thousands, probably tens of thousands of people who have died now in Mexico under the current rules connected to ownership of guns. We've also, in this country, had a dramatic increase in the number of deaths from guns the last 2 years since kind of the beginning, or at least expansion, of the I Hate Police movement, which I blame for all the young people and not so young people who have died in the last 2 years in this massive increase of murders that we've seen, almost unprecedented. First of all, I'd like Mrs. Swerd to comment a little bit on that Mexican statistic and comment on the dramatic increase in the number of homicides in this country in the last 2 years. Not because it's easier to own guns, but kind of because rhetoric, a lot of the rhetoric coming out of this building, this anti-police rhetoric.
Congressman, I will respectfully refrain from commenting on the statistics you pointed out from Mexico. I'm not overly familiar with any of the underlying causes. I will, to the greater point, say Mexico is, to my awareness, one of the only other countries in the world with a right to, quote, keep and bear arms, which is sort of a misnomer in that country, as you point out. So it's fundamentally different understanding of what that means than clearly in our country. As to, I'm sorry, please remind me of the second aspect.
Well, the massive increase in murders in this country in the last 2 years.
I think it's hard to pin that down to any one simplistic notion of what is causing that. Certainly, I think problems with policing and cause to defund the police, loss of trust between communities and police members, that all plays a role, as I pointed out in my written submission.
Okay.
But I think it's a number of things.
Yeah, I'll give you another question then. This week I'll be reintroducing something called the Student and Teacher Safety Act, which will allow schools to use existing grants they have, meant in part for improving school conditions and learning, to improve or boost school safety. Following the Uvalde shooting, the White House press secretary said that President Biden does not believe in hardening schools to provide more security resources or law enforcement officers. If these measures can be effective in preventing another mass shooting, why do you think the President is not open to hardening schools this way?
I cannot read the President's mind, but my guess is he would rather focus on other ways of addressing it. I would also very quickly like to point out, to reference something Congressman Mfume said, to seem to infer that we only care about or have only mentioned one aspect of a greater issue, which is focusing on physical security. Congressman, I respectfully don't know if you were not here for my opening statement or have not read my written submission, but I respectfully have pointed out roughly a dozen other issues as well. This is comprehensive in nature. It is not one thing or the other. It is both.
I've been here for 3 hours since before the hearing started. I heard your testimony. My reference was to schools, and my reminder was those are
Madam
not
Chair,
the
I
only
think he's
sources.
out of
Gentleman
order.
is not recognized.
Well,
Yeah.
witness, address me, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Could you give me another few seconds back? Someone jumped in there. Well, could you give us, if if President Biden is going to stand between us and trying to improve the physical security in school districts, can you give us other ideas that we can use to prevent these tragedies?
Sure. As I mentioned in both my written and oral testimony, I think we can focus very clearly on building up the nation's mental health infrastructure, both specifically in schools and generally across the board. We are talking about 2/3 of gun deaths every year that are suicides, which is clearly plays into an aspect of mental health, which is problematic. We are talking about with mass shootings, individuals who clearly show signs of being a danger to themselves or others, but who are otherwise, not felons yet, and oftentimes cannot be involuntarily civilly committed. So looking at, targeted interventions with adequate means of due process, and also just behavioral risk assessment. We've talked about Instagram and threats on Instagram. What's concerning to me is that so many people saw so many signs, especially in Uvalde, and it appears that nobody reported them or knew to report them or knew how to report them or didn't think anything would be done about it.
Okay,
And
the
that is
gentleman's
concerning to me.
time has expired.